away. Yeah, so let's do the same thing. Let's strip everything away, and what would you say is the thing that we can accept? The bare fundamentals, that no matter how skeptical you are, what's the elementary thing that you can accept?
Of course, a very great example, the cat. I can strip everything away, and then I can know my own existence. I trust my senses a little bit more than the cat did, so I trust that this world is real. What I see around me is a representation of reality, and I trust my brain, but to a certain level, because I know not everything that seems preferable or logical is logical, or preferable, or true.
Would you also accept that one's senses can deceive a person also?
Of course.
For example, I'm sure you've seen these little YouTube videos where you've got these children, you know, there's these different glasses and they put them on for the first time, and it helps, you know, colorblind children see color for the first time, and seeing their reaction is amazing. But these very children, they're convinced that their way of seeing reality is the correct way. So you acknowledge that the senses can't always be trusted, yeah?
Of course, there's also animals that can see more than us and that can hear more than us. So we have our limited version of perception.
So what would you say, even if you were to strip the senses, how can we go even more fundamental than that?
Well, if you strip the senses, then you only know that you exist because you can hear your own thoughts.
Excellent, excellent. So I would agree with you also that we exist. That's the most elementary thought. Now, another example, let's just say I have my phone here, yeah? A very old phone, but old is gold, you know? So I'm holding this up. So say if I was to ask you, why is this phone not randomly combusting and exploding?
Because it seems that it is sophisticatedly has been built by components that we can put together and remove and
okay, let's think generally, like your hat. You have your hat with you. Why is your hat randomly not catching fire or flying, or randomly it becomes something of heavy mass like a neutron star and goes down into the ground and sucks you in also? Or why is it that when you cross the road you're crossing with somewhat contentment that the laws of nature won't randomly start going crazy?
Yeah, because as you pointed out, there is laws of nature, and scientists have been able to observe them and learn how the universe functions.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So Saif, I'm going to put these in a logical syllogism now, and let me know how you feel. So premise one. We exist, there is existence. Premise two, the laws of nature are uniform, regular, and stable. And that's why we can do science. That's why we can live our life. We can do that because the laws of nature have to be uniform, regular, and stable. So then, it then results that there needs to be an existence that explains the uniformity, regularity, and stability. What do you think about that?
This is where I think we depart from each other. You're taking a precondition that there must be what you described. I think that the world is inherently meaningless and absurd, and we should just accept the absurdity of our existence, that there is no meaning, we're not going anywhere, we're not going to exist forever.
That's fine, we can come to meaning later. For now, we just want to talk about an existence. That existence that is responsible for the uniformity, regularity, and stability of nature, because these two things we agree upon. Yeah, so if we agree on these two, then surely it results through the mode of logic. Of course, we rely upon also that there needs to also be an existence. It follows that there needs to be an existence that is able to explain, or that explains the uniformity, regularity, and stability. So let's just say you have an issue with that, no problem. Yeah. Let's then say there are three types of existences. Yeah. You have an impossible existence, like a squared circle. It can't exist. you have an existence which is contingent, yeah, and then so contingent things, for example, phone is contingent upon something else, yeah. If I was to loosely translate it, I would say dependent.
Dependent on existing objects.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's the second type, yeah, contingent. And then you've got a third type, which is necessary. Yeah, now how I'm defining contingency is something that's made out of parts, something that can cease to exist, and something that can be any other way. Yeah, and for something necessary, it's the opposite. Yeah, it's not composed of parts, it can't cease to exist, and it can't be conceived any other way. Yeah, so these are conditions accepted by Bertrand Russell and the likes.
Thomas Aquinas, or
I mean, so these are the three types of existences. Yeah. So Saif, if I was to ask you now, the universe, what type of existence is the universe out of these three?
I think that energy and material in the universe will always exist, because it will only change form, and but I don't think that the grounds that we are gonna build that argument on is that what we know exists depends on something else.
Let me clarify. Maybe I didn't explain properly.
Yeah.
So what initially I said existence. Yeah, I tried the logical syllogism, which logically is sound, but you had an issue with the no problem. Yeah. Then I said, look, there's three types of existences: something that can't exist, something which is contingent, something which is necessary. Yeah. So if we loosely describe it, let's just say something that can't exist. I'll take that out of the equation. So you got something that's dependent. Like a phone, like a browser, like a computer, something which is independent. Yeah, and then my question was, well, first of all, are there any other existences that you would say that I've missed out?
No, I think within your own, within the boundaries of this argument, I think it is
brilliant.
Yeah, but so, I know that also there's other philosophies, there's other conditions, there's other preconditions that in different alternative versions of the arguments of existence also.
But we can discuss that, no problem.
Plato has his English betrays me sometimes. The ideal world with the ideas.
Sorry, what language? What's your original?
I speak Arabic and Norwegian and English.
Oh wow!
Therefore, sometimes I get a little bit lost. But I know in the Greek philosophies, they have the ideas, the idea of a tree, and then you have the manifestation of a tree. And then in Thomas Aquinas, that I think, if not also one other philosopher, spoke about the contingent and the non-contingent, multiple philosophers. But I see both as two separate ways you can see things, but that doesn't mean that the preconditions that they apply, I don't see them as necessary. The pre-existence or whatever, I think those are...
I think, say for what I'm trying to say...
Philosophical exercise. It's a philosophical exercise, but I don't see it's a way to find truth.
The thing is, look, if we strip it down to the bare bones, existence is something that we don't deny. I would say it's the rationalist method or discursive reasoning, which I would argue that it is logically sound to then build up from existence, building up for something that we can't deny, and then rationally asking, okay, what are the types of existences, and then concluding that there are three existences, and then building on from that. It is rational discursive reasoning, and then to rationally then say, okay, the universe, what type of existence? Because we believe the universe exists.
I believe the universe has always existed, and it will always exist. I disagree with the approach. I choose to start with, like we started, with the individual and go from there and up. But you started
wouldn't you argue that if we go with individuals, it's more subjective? So here what we're doing is we're taking a somewhat, loosely, if I can use that word, objective truth of existence.
To be honest, I don't agree that it's objective.
That's why I said loosely,
I agree,
somewhat.
I agree. Because there's multiple approaches to categorize types of existence and categorize the ideas of let's say the blueprints of the existence, like Plato did.
Just unpack that for me. The blueprints.
What Plato taught, I think, was that there's an ideal form, the world of forms, or the realm of forms. So that there's the the ideal form for everything, and there's a worldly manifestation. So there's many versions of trees. There's many different trees in different shapes, but there's the form of a tree, which is one in the realm of forms. This is how.
What do you mean realm of forms?
This is the word he used. It's the.
Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I'm just displaying an alternative way of categorizing existence and how can things come from and how we can categorize and understand
But,
them.
yeah, but say if that's not something that you agree with, or that you kind of use, let's
put it on the side. I don't mind.
Let's stick with stuff that, because then we can have a discussion.
Exactly.
If, for example, I break that down and then you say, oh, I don't believe in that anyway. Then
But the point is that what I'm trying to say is that.
Let's just stick with this then. Let's stick with this, and then you tell me then. So there's three types of existence. Am I correct to assume that you are saying that the universe is an independent, a necessary existence?
Yes, I would. I don't know what you put on these words. I know slightly, but not all the way through. But I would say yes.
Okay.
The universe is.
No problem.
Yeah.
Then what I'll do, I'll just remind you of the words, because I don't want to straw man you, or I don't want to kind of say, oh, you said this, and pin you on that.
Exactly.
So I'll just remind you. So contingency, something that's made out of parts. It can cease to exist, and it can be seen in another way. For example, a tree. A tree can die. You can pluck a leaf off the tree. It can be seen in a different way. It's composed of parts. You've got the roots of the tree, you've got the trunk of the tree, you've got the branches, and you've got the leaves. So something necessary, again, it's not made from parts. Now, I would even argue, like even a mathematical set. A set depends upon its members. But we can unpack that a bit later on. So contingency is something like this brother standing over here. He's contingent. He's got legs. A leg can be taken off. Well, I'm not going to. Don't. So it's a part. A part can be taken off. He can be given a prosthetic leg. He ceases to exist. He can be understood in a different way. Something necessary is, think of it like the opposite of that. So am I correct now to still assume that you're saying that the universe is necessary?
Yes.
Then I would say to you, Saif, that is our description of God. That it's a necessary being. Can't be seen any other way. It's not composed of parts. It cannot cease to exist. So I would say where we call something God or creator, you're calling it the universe. But then Saif, I would go further and I would say that it's not necessary, because the universe itself can be understood in a different way. It's also composed of parts. Whether even if we go to the multiverse theory or whatever we do, even if we go ad infinitum, and I give the example, I mean, Muhammad Hijab normally has these beads. So if I was just to use my finger, if it's made of three parts, this is a set, a mathematical set, and it's made of parts. Am I correct to assume that the set depends upon its members? So that's why we will say that a mathematical set, even if it's ad infinitum, is still contingent, because it's dependent upon its parts, you see, Saif. So we say that that there needs to be a creator now, there needs to be a prime mover, there needs to be an existence that itself is necessary to start that. And if I was to use a crude example of a person that's about to shoot an arrow, and his condition is, I will only shoot an arrow if I get permission. So he asks this individual, can I shoot the arrow? He says, no, let me ask that individual. Let me ask B. And B says, let me ask C. So say eventually I'm not going to shoot the arrow, am I? So I guess the point that I'm trying to say, Saif, is the fact that we're here shows that that arrow, quote unquote, was shot. Because sometimes what we do with ad infinitum, we say that, because it's in infinity, it's always there, but then it's somewhat a lazy way of sidelining a necessary being. Do you see where I'm coming from?
I see. I've read about this topic before. I read Al-Ghazali, and of course, very shortly. I didn't read the whole books and the whole works. There would have been a lot of knowledge that I'm sure you yourself have. I think that when I take a holistic look at religion or God, even though when you break it down to certain arguments, it might sound convincing or necessary or appealing or rational, but when I take a holistic look at the whole package, I feel that.
Okay, no problem, Saif.
Yes.
I know that's annoying you. Should we just move, yeah? We'll go over there, yeah? The thing is, I'm used to you're still seeking, my friend, because I'm going to be honest, it is a sad reality, and as social beings, we do. I mean, what we see around us does affect us, and sometimes when what we see around us is not consistent with what people are saying. Eventually, as human beings, we do start questioning, like, hang on a minute, like something's not right. So I get that point. So it's good, Saif, that you're saying that what we were discussing does seem rational, does seem logical. However, correct me if I'm strawmanning you, that however, when you look at the bigger picture, that's what you have an issue with. You don't have an issue with the contingency argument, the cosmological argument. You've read it and they seem appealing to you. I'm correct in assuming that, yeah?
It seems appealing. I know it's been criticized, or let's say answered by others and stuff. I see the whole debate as very interesting and very logical and constructive in a way. Yes, and
what I was going to add, apologies, was the cosmological argument, Saif. Maybe you can apply that to that there has been some kalam against that, there's been some discussion against that. But the contingency argument, there hasn't been. There's been no, in fact, it's actually from time immemorial till now, it's one that's even been accepted by the likes of Bertrand Russell and the likes. It's a very strong argument, and there isn't much that's in fact, I haven't come across, even Muhammad Hijab was saying that as well. There is no solid argument against that at the moment. But yeah, so if we were to now extrapolate that and we continue on there, Saif, what would you say is the thing that's really bugging you about this whole kind of image?
What's bugging me is that the religions that we have in front of us has caused a lot of evil throughout history and continue to do so today. The religions, the way they're taught in a... I'm going to speak of myself. When I grew up learning about Sunni Islam in Damascus, I think that there was...
Oh, you studied in Damascus?
Yeah, I grew up in Damascus, and I got educated the normal average, what the normal average kid would learn. And I think that they keep a lot behind closed doors for us. They teach us about certain surface level things that sound appealing, and at the same time that can be problematic. But then when I went individually and started looking in what critics of Islam have to say, or even reading and I'm not saying reading in books written by let's say non-Muslims, even within the Muslims book, I found a lot of problematic issues ethically and not maybe philosophically, but ethically and within regarding to humans and how we should treat each other.
But Saif, logically, would you agree that the presence of evil or the problem of evil, as they say, doesn't disprove a God? Would you agree with that?
I'm not, I don't know if that's we can go into that discussion, and also there's standard arguments for and against. I think in my perception, I don't mind there's being evil. I mind the evil in the religion. I mind the evil in the Islamic books. And this is where I will not, my intellectual integrity, let's say, if I'm going to call it that, does not allow me to shove it away and say, God knows best. Because many people say, oh, God knows best, don't look at these things, they're here to weaken your faith. But when certain men around the Prophet have done some things, when the Prophet himself had led by example in a way that I see is inappropriate, that is supposed to be an example for the whole of humanity, then and then I grew. When I was 15 or 16 when ISIS came up, and then that put me in a position where I have to find out: is this what my religion wants me to do, or is this just a group of people that are faking being Muslims, or are lost, or are hypocrites of some sort? And,
What did you conclude with ISIS?
I conclude that they take things very far away. I think that there are. I'm not going to say all what they do. I think most of what they did have been done previously in history. I'm not going to say by the Prophet or by his close followers, but at some point in history has been done. It's not. They didn't bring anything new in a way. It's just that they brought something from the past, which maybe in its own age was kind of the norm, actually.
But bear
right?
in mind, Saif, I think we should be careful here, because when you're saying what ISIS is doing is stuff that was done in the past, in the history of Islam. That's a worrying statement, because what ISIS is doing is stuff like taking innocent people, who they deem to be heretics, based upon no Islamic kind of grounding, recording, beheading, violating vital Islamic laws like killing of women and children, and doing stuff like this, which is not present in Islam. In fact, the doctrines of Islam clearly speak against killing of women and children and killing of innocent people. So
well, I wouldn't blame it neither on Islam or Muslims, because I know that Islam is practiced differently by different groups of Muslims, and I know that Muslims are also a diverse group. There's the Mu'tazila, Al-Asha'ira, Al-Hanafiyya, there's the Sufis and the Sunnis and the Shias, and even within the Shias there's the 12ers and the Sixers. I will never blame it on the whole group of those.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm clearing it up. But I still think that also the church, the Catholic Church, they did even worse stuff maybe back in history. So what I'm saying is, ISIS was a reason that I needed to find out quickly about what do I believe in. It made it urgent. And when I read in the Islamic books, there was alarming things. There was verses in the Quran. There was Salafi imams on TVs funded by all money by Saudi Arabia on Qanat al-Nas and Qanat Iqra in Arabic, and they would go out and they would talk about all the gender inequality that they think is good. They would talk about slavery, taking slaves from as a booty from war, and they would still romanticize it, and that was for me morally repulsive, to be honest. And I believe that there are other better versions of Islam. I believe that maybe those versions, those interpretations, let's say, should be more dominant, and I see that is happening, hopefully.
But Saif, the thing is...
But then when religion is so divided, when you see that Islam is so divided, that's like, if God is behind this, it wouldn't have been like this. It wouldn't have been that there's a bunch of terrorists and a bunch of... I'm not talking only Islam, and many other, in Hinduism and Christianity, there's the same. I don't think God would be behind any one of those religions in this way.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm not going to justify it by saying, Hindus are like this or Christians are like this, because I understand that's not going to be logical from my side. But Saif, because I look into this stuff, and one of the reasons for you it was ISIS, for me it was 9/11, because when I was young, 9/11 happened, and everywhere I looked, people were pointing fingers at my religion, saying, it's Muslims, it's Islam, and then I had to look into it as well. So and then I did, but I think we both came to different conclusions towards the end. But the thing is, one needs to understand, like, are you aware where ISIS actually stemmed from and why they stemmed?
According to what I see,
you said you've researched it.
When you talk politically and stuff, of course they got support from different groups, and I'm not going to go into that because there's a lot of unknown facts. But I think the ideology stems from what the closest thing I would say is Wahhabi, Salafi, Islam, to be honest. I don't know what the Prophet preached, but throughout the chain, I think there have been bad apples that might have led to extremist groups.
I guess what I'm saying, Saif, is why did that group start?
Why did that group start? they wanted to, I think it was a bunch of extremists around the world that were unhappy, and they wanted to create an Islamic state where they practice Sharia. And I think that was a dream. I think that was what's being sold to those men, those young men. Because I know, because I also was faced part of the propaganda. And just when you talked about 9/11, I have recordings, and I've watched the imams motivating men to go fight in Afghanistan and join al-Mujahideen that then became so. Throughout also my lifetime, and even what I've seen in near history, there has been Muslim imams and sheikhs on the wrong side of history that use religion to motivate, I'd say, politics, to be honest. They have a political agenda and they recruit through religion. And I think that's very sad for a religion, because religion is about God, it's about spirituality. It's not about politics and invading and war. I don't think it should be about that.
Okay, I think maybe we kind of missed the point there.
Off, sorry.
So just going back to the original point, how ISIS started. I'm just going to give you an analogy, and I'm also we're going to discuss what you said about the imams and stuff. I'm not just dismissing that, but because you mentioned it before, I want to give some dedicated time to that. So remind me in case I forget, Said. So after World War I, Germany, how the state Germany was after the devastating war that took place, it was a vacuum. There was a vacuum, and the country was riddled in debt. It was in a very terrible state, Saif. And that then left it ripe for pickings. Then you had somebody that came and that offered a solution. And we know Hitler idealized, of course, Darwin and the whole kind of liberal mindset, etc., etc.
I would say liberal, but
You wouldn't?
On Hitler, no, I don't think he was. He was a socialist and he was nationalist, which is not usually liberal ideologies, especially the nationalism part.
Okay. So maybe no problem. So let's just say with Hitler, when he then came in, he was able to push anything that he wanted. Why? Because of the state of the country. Now, Saif, if I say, there are people in that country that was supporting Hitler. Look at this picture. There's a famous picture of a Hitler sermon. He's delivering a sermon, and everybody is doing the salute except one person. And there's like a caption saying, "Be like this one person." But the thing is, at that time, it was very difficult because of the torment that these people were going through. Even if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, forget self-actualization. A person doesn't even have a house, safety or food. There's no kind of, you're not bothered with self-actualization. So forget peace and love and equality. They're not going to be interested in that if they don't even have mere safety. So I'm using that as an analogy to then link it to Iraq.
Iraq and Syria, it's in my country, I grew up.
Exactly.
I had to come here because of similar men.
Exactly. So in Iraq, when this invasion took place, this illegal occupation, illegal war, and they removed Saddam Hussein, who was part of the Ba'athist party. And I'm sure you'll agree that just because Saddam was toppled doesn't mean that the Ba'athist mentality and the Ba'athist party was toppled. And you've got academics like Karen Armstrong that further says this also. And she also says that there were people that went, and she I think enumerates these in her discussion with Mehdi Hassan on Al Jazeera. She's got a book called Fields of Blood also, which I would recommend. It's a very good book also. And she's of this argument that it's not necessarily religion that leads to war, it's mostly politics. And she's got certain case studies that push this forward. For example, she puts forward 2 case studies that 2 people from the UK that went to join ISIS. One of them used to own a bar. He used to sell alcohol. Another individual, he bought a book called Islam for Dummies 2 weeks before. They checked his account and they saw Islam for Dummies. So just imagine, Saif, you're going to fight a holy war and you bought a book called Islam for Dummies a couple of weeks
Well,
before.
I'm sure on the other side there was this Islam for Dummies, but there was people that were they knew what they were doing exactly.
But then, Saif, what I would argue is, then these groups that you said, I would argue that Salafi, Hanafi, all of that is under the umbrella of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, yeah? And then of course you've got the Shia. I haven't come across a single credible academic of a single sect that has claimed what ISIS is doing is correct. Now, Saif, what I will say is, and I will give you the analogy of somebody that does a terrible action and shouts Mr. Bean. Yeah. Now, does it mean that Mr. Bean is responsible for the actions and he has to respond? Or does it mean that these are people who are trying to claim that, when you have mainstream scholars and academics that have shunned them? I see you want to respond to that.
The Islamic Council, the Islamic Scholars Council in Saudi Arabia and in Egypt, they go easily and call Ahmadiyyas infidels. يكفرون, in Arabic it's takfir al-Ahmadiyya, or like saying, declaring Ahmadiyya as infidels. Yes. However, there has been calls, why wouldn't you call ISIS members infidels? Didn't they go out of Islam by committing what they did? And they never did that. They never declared them as non-Muslim. They declared them as, I think, I forgot, I don't have an English translation for the word. Khawarij, or like they have descended, or
they're
have
part of a heretical.
Heretic, yeah, they're heretics, but not infidels in a way. And I think that the Mr. Bean argument is that I know there's idiots that join ISIS just because the same reason they become right-wing extremists and shoot people up. Some of them are ideologically motivated, and some of them are just idiots that want to do something violent or get whatever that makes them happy. But I still think the Muslim population needs to look into ISIS and be clear about what came from our books and what did not came from our books. I think that there's what you would call the Islamic heritage of scholarly works throughout the years. Some of them are very problematic. Ibn Tanmiya is one that is being criticized a lot after especially ISIS came up. And I think it's the same if we would turn a blind eye to the extremism that totally exists in certain scholarly works and in some quotes of the Prophet that are, many people would say, are confirmed or not confirmed, which is like a little bit ambiguous when it comes to...
I want to answer your points. That's why there's quite a few things that you said. So the first, you said the first thing was that the Saudi Council declared the Ahmadiyyas as kafirs. Yeah, the thing, Saif, is Saudi Arabia doesn't represent all Muslims. And I think, going back to my point, that there's not a single group, there's not a single sect that claims what ISIS is doing is in line with mainstream Islam, or that they're a part of mainstream Islam. Now the thing, Saif, is for us to declare somebody as kafir, there has to be something that is integral in their doctrine, their aqidah, their faith. Now with Ahmadiyya, they believe that there is another prophet that came after Muhammad, peace be upon him. But with the Khawarij, it's again, yes, we can say that there's certain things that are incorrect or whatnot, but to declare somebody as disbeliever, that's a very heavy statement. It's a very categorical statement to being made. But I stick by what I said, which is, again, had you been able to stand there and say, because if you said, look, Saudi said that what ISIS is doing is correct, you've got Sheikh Qardawi of Egypt saying, or is it Mufti Taqi al-Uthmani of Deoband saying this correct, or Akram Nadwi, then I would say, okay, now this is a problem that we have. But yet, Saif, the fact that you're unable to give me a single such person shows that there is unanimous agreement within the Ummah of Muslims that these individuals are not following Islam as it should be followed. What they're doing is widely condemned, and there is a clear disjunct. Now, because myself, I have to deal with these sorts of claims and these people, so I have to look into it. And I'm telling you, Saif, I have not come across a single instance where a single scholar has said, you know what they've done is correct. Yeah, beheading people that are innocent, willy-nilly, killing Muslims just because, in fact, they kill, Sunnis as well, because they believe that they don't follow their mentality. So, and also, if I may also add, there's one other point that, with these groups, Saif, the thing is, of course, we know that when these groups come, they can be curbed. Yeah, like we know the 969 of the Buddhist group, the Hindutva of India. The reason why they're growing is because they're state-sponsored. Now, what was interesting about ISIS was this ISIS actually started, and there's this discussion by, I think his name is Colonel Flynn, was in discussion with Mehdi Hassan on Al Jazeera. You can check it out on YouTube. And he's saying, look, I accept that because they had camps like Camp Nama. Yeah, it's called Nasty Ass Military something. Yeah, I've forgotten the last acronym. But they had these very strange places, and that's where ISIS actually grew from. And then John Kerry, he was a Secretary of Defense at that time, and you can check this again, it's on YouTube. He said it in a recording as well. He said we allowed ISIS to grow. Why? To put pressure on Bashar al-Assad. So it was strategically, we allowed them to grow. Yeah. But then when we noticed that, of course, Bashar allied himself with Russia, by then it was too late. The group had morphed into something. And of course there were other groups like Al-Nusra and so. They were very weak groups. They were being supported by the United States to weaken ISIS. But what would happen was they were too weak, and when they would be taken over by ISIS, their weapons would then go into the possession of ISIS. So indirectly, they were grown. And Hillary Clinton also is speaking to seniors, and she's saying, look, we funded the Mujahideen against.
That's well known, yes.
So what Saif needs to be distinguished here is the kind of elite where you've got state leaders and you've got geopolitics taking place, and then you compare it with the everyday awam, the everyday kind of followers. Now, I'm sure you'll appreciate also that the laws or the mentality that we're going through are not going to be adopted by the people that are in a concentration camp, open air camp of Gaza, of Palestine. Yeah, I'm sure you can also appreciate what they're going through, and the heartache and what they're going through as well. So I guess the point that I'm trying to say, my friend, is don't extrapolate from geopolitical issues. For example, you cannot attribute what the Muslim Ummah has gone through with regards to the drawing of borders. You cannot claim what other people are going through with regards to the Berlin Conference that Africa went through, where borders were drawn, the Berlin Conference. The Sykes-Picot Treaty post-Ottoman Empire, where borders were drawn. Balfour Declaration, in which Palestine was literally handed on a platter to the Israelis.
I think, to be honest, I acknowledge the geopolitical conditions, but I think whoever straps a bomb around himself and goes and clicks the button to explode and kill civilians in my city, in Damascus, there have been a lot of explosions. Those people aren't backed by Western ideology, they aren't backed by America or Russia or anybody. There is an underlying extremist ideology. I'm not saying it's the whole religion, but I think it's hiding somewhere inside.
Let me give you an example.
And just so everyone, Osama bin Laden and Abu Mus'ab al-Zarqawi, very known worldwide terrorists, they used to be praised on Al Jazeera, praised on Arabic TVs. Hassan Nasrallah, who's also another terrorist, people of my family had his picture as a background of their phone. There is a problem of romanticizing war and terrorism in the Muslim population, and there is a problem of youth, like you say, awam youth, being motivated by certain sheikhs, certain imams to go and fight wars. I think Islam is being used by too many people in a...
You've hit the nail on the head now.
Yeah, they're being used by too many people to motivate youth to go and fight wars.
You've hit the nail on the head now.
Yeah.
Using Islam. And this is not strictly for Muslims either. This was done even during Afghanistan when it was fighting the Soviet Union. Religion was used also by the Americans there also. Yeah, and religion continues to be used now in India. Yeah, shunning Christians, shunning the Dalits, shunning the Muslims is being done on a state level. Why? By hiding under the pretense of Hinduism. But is it actual Hinduism? It's not. It's the RSS ideology. Yeah, and it's the same. If you speak to Orthodox Jewish people, they don't even accept that that land is their land. Yeah, they say it's not our land, and we shouldn't be claiming that. However, Israel is also hiding behind the Old Testament. Yeah, so what I will say, Saif, is this is something that's not common to Islam. However, according to Georgia State University, there was a research that they posted that Muslim perpetrators of terror get 4.5 times more coverage in the media than people of other faiths. In fact, the ADL posted research, a figure, ADL and the Europol, where they said that post 9/11, 73% of the attacks that have taken place are done by far rights. Yeah, but you don't see this being reflected. Yeah, and if I was to ask you, Saif, why this discrepancy when we know it's far right, but then you've got leaders like Donald Trump that didn't even accept, wasn't willing to condemn the far right. Muslims are getting more coverage. What would you say the reason is according to your neutral understanding?
Well, I totally believe that Western media portrays Muslims and actions portrayed by certain people they cover it more and they cover it in a different way, and that's a game of the media.
That's very honest of you.
Yeah, of course, and of course Trump or whatever. That's I'm not going to even go.
Why do they?
Why do they?
That's a good question.
Political leanings. People have agendas. Groups have different agendas. Countries. Political.
Oh, is that mine?
Yeah.
Oh, subhanAllah. Yeah. Oh,
I don't, because
I'll do it. I'm used to it.
I don't know what their motivation is. What I can analyze is that
I as a Muslim thought about it. Why do they? And I think Islam is the only religion which is sticking to its ideology, and that seems to be the only obstacle at the moment.
I don't think Islam is sticking to its ideology. Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, the new crown prince, is changing the country. He went out and he publicly distanced himself from Wahhabism, and he said we should understand our religion from our time. So I think it's a big fallacy, a big mistake that many Muslims think that Islam has never changed since the day it came. Islam went through a lot of changes. Islam has been practiced differently in different places and in different times. I think, but people like to look at.
But Saif, the thing is, Islam being practiced differently doesn't imply Islam has been changed. Because Islam has principles, and because Islam, when we talk about Islam, I'm talking about the final testament and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We believe obviously Islam didn't start 1400 years ago, but there are principles. Oh my God, that was massive. There's a giant bee that was the size of a fist. We don't believe Islam has been changed. But there is a methodology that makes Islam such that it's able to be practiced by people of different cultures, different countries. It's something that is practicable. But I think we went on a tangent there.
I think back to ISIS, one of the main issues me and many people have with ISIS is the point that they enslaved Yazidi girls, they made them into sex slaves, they bought them and sold them, and that was one of the things that they did not invent. There was Suq al-Nakhasa, is a famous thing in Arabic literature and history. We know that there has been slave trade until the West. I'm gonna put the West until the West came and made Gulf countries sign agreements to stop with slavery and trading with slaves. I think that's a huge issue for any religion that claims to be from God in any certain way, to acknowledge or to legalize or to deal with in any way the sale of.
But the thing, Saif, is also we romanticize this fact that the West pinned down and said, look, let's end slavery. But bear in mind, until about 3-4 years ago, this country that we're living in at the moment was still giving reparations to slave owners. Yeah, so let's also give the complete context as well. If it was such an evil thing, then we should have abolished it completely. Don't take taxpayers' money and then still continue to give reparations for such heinous acts also, because that is within the liberal framework. Yeah, giving reparations back, because again, this is capitalist society that we're living in. But I think we're juggling a lot of things at the moment.
I think we're juggling only.
Yeah.
I think let's go to ISIS. Let's go to why I left Islam, because extremism, because ISIS, because slavery.
But I think that discussion was very good in the sense that you've acknowledged that Islam has a disproportionate kind of media coverage based upon, correct me if I'm wrong, political leanings and other leanings, like for example the presence of natural resources, especially after even pre-petrodollar, when Saudi raised the price of petrol and America pretty much came to a standstill. And what happened was then America said, look, we have to deal with this, we have to sort this out. And in fact, in Secret Affairs by Mark Curtis, he gives a copious amount of quotes where you had high-level leaders saying that it's within our interests that the Middle East stays divided. Why? Because, and we see, again, you can read literature of even likes of Gamal Abdel Nasser. You know?
Yeah, of course, Gamal Abdel Nasser.
Yeah, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt. Yeah. That he wanted Arabs to come together in one kind of unit, and there were issues, and the British have admitted, openly. These are declassified documents that they tried to assassinate him. Different by poisoning his chocolates. However pathetic that sounds, but they attempted to poison his dairy milk chocolates and the likes. But the point that I'm trying to say is, it's not as simple as it's an ideology thing. There is something, for example, even in India, when the British were ruling over India for 180 years, the brutal colonization, they noticed that there was a disunity between the Hindus and the Muslims, and they said this is brilliant for us, and they capitalized on this. This divide and conquer mentality. And this is what they do. Let me give you another example.
Well, let me comment. The invading powers exploiting division is evil, but where does it I am against the notion that they create the division. Shia and Sunnis didn't start because of a Western or American let's say conspiracy.
I agree with you.
And then all the caliphs, I think more caliphs died being killed throughout Muslim empire than normal death, because of also turmoil and because of this dynasty wants to take from that dynasty. And when go back to the media section, I know that Western media has a bias toward the Muslim world, and I know also Western media within itself, some of it has a capitalist bias, conservative, liberal bias, and I know that Al Jazeera has a bias against Europe and America, so every media has bias. Having bias by a certain media against you doesn't say anything about you and just how the world works and how media works, I think.
Okay,
so those are 2 points we packed.
Right, no problem. So the thing, what you're doing, Saif, is you're conflating the power of the Western media and its influence over the globe compared to Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera comes from Qatar. The influence of Al Jazeera cannot be compared to, say, Rupert Murdoch's empire, which spans over many countries. And the funding, if you compare the funding of it, if you compare the amount of print papers, you compare the amount of channels it's featured on, again, I covered the funding, and the amount of journalists that they've had is chalk and cheese. So that's why there would be extensive amount of research, and I would say the influence of the Western media is more stronger, and that's why you've got the likes of course, the Taliban, that are also even in what they were doing, they were kowtowing to the Western media because they know that the Western media has a greater influence than, say, Al Jazeera and Qatar. So that was one point that you said. The other one you were talking about was the Khalifas being killed, but we don't have an issue with that. In fact, the Prophet, peace be upon him, prophesied, and he told us that after the death of Uthman radiallahu anh, the third Khalif, Abu Bakr, Umar, then Uthman, bloodshed, it will continue, and there will be issues within the Ummah. But again, that's not to say that Islam is incorrect, that there's an issue with Islam, because these prophecies were given, number one, to distinguish and to warn the people to how to conduct themselves, and number two, that there's a clear decadence within the Ummah. As we approach the end of times, people naturally are turning slowly away from religion, and it's not because religion doesn't appeal to them, because sometimes I would say, as the Prophet prophesied, knowledge will be taken from you. Like just in the last couple of years, very key Islamic and Muslim figures, imams, scholars have died. Yeah, great amount of literature has been lost. So the death of Khalifas isn't necessarily I would say a point of contention, or a point that is an issue for us. However, it just shows that as we're approaching the end of times, decadence within the Ummah is happening. However, we're not here to defend Muslims. We're here to defend Islam. We're here to defend the texts of Islam. Because if I'm here to defend Muslims and you're here to defend the founder of liberalism, John Locke, you're gonna be, especially when what John Locke has said about apostasy, when permitting that for the Jewish people, and of course John Stuart Mill, and all sorts of issues. I'm sure both of us would eventually conclude by saying, you know what, he doesn't represent the liberal kind of ideology, and I would say ISIS, I would say Al Qaeda doesn't represent that ideology. But Saif, I would also say that even 969. Do you know who the 969 are?
969er.
969 terrorist group.
No. Is it the? I know the 7/11.
That was a terrorist attack that took place in London. No.
Oh, no, okay.
969 is an extremist Buddhist group. Yeah, and that is the main extremist Buddhist group. But I would question why you don't know, because a lot of Muslims have died in Myanmar because of the 969. Have you heard, I know I mentioned RSS, have you heard of the Hindutva group?
I think so, yeah. I wrote a small, I work a little bit in this domain, so yes. Yeah.
Very good. When's the last time that you heard or you saw the Hindutva being covered in the mainstream media in this country?
Well, no, that has not been covered. I don't watch British media, so I cannot speak for that, but I can say in general, it's not a topic that's covered.
But Saif, I've been following Indian news for, I would say, the best part of half a year to a year. And I'm telling you, there's certain things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. In fact, last week, this was an issue. This happened in India, where there were protests taking place against the police, and there was somebody that was attacked, and there was a journalist who went and he stomped on the face. In Assam, in India. Yeah, still in India. So he stomped on the face of this Muslim. Yeah, and the police were there. They were very reluctantly, they kind of pulled him away, and then you could see a policeman was hugging him thereafter. Compare this with Dylan Roof in America when he did a mass shooting. Yeah, after doing a mass shooting in the church, he went with the police and said, barefaced, "I'm hungry." And the police took him for Burger King. Yeah, the point that I'm trying to say, Saif, is there is a clear bias. Yeah, and the bias is very, very clear. Yeah, and to then say that, okay, it's Islam, I will say, look, there's extreme elements everywhere. However, I would argue, Saif, with the extreme elements in Islam, it's being facilitated. It's being facilitated by certain countries for their nefarious ends. And I agree with you, and you mentioned this point, and I agree with you that these points are not planted in by the West. I'm not going to make that fallacious reasoning. It exists there, just like it exists with any other ideology, any other faith or religion, in any other household. Like if my child watches inappropriate things, if I now allow him, I give him a laptop for his room, I don't check his internet history, what I'm doing is I'm facilitating for that desire in him and that addiction to pornography and the likes to grow. However, when I'm kind of on it, I'm like, no, let's have a discussion, mate. Why do you feel the need to do that? Yeah, and you know what? I'm not giving you a device for your room. You're going to watch it in the sitting room where it's a family room, etc. But what I'm arguing is, just like with Hillary Clinton and of course the CIA and the Mujahideen fighting Soviet Union, and even in Iran in about 1951, they had a leader, Mohammad Mossadegh. Yeah, despite his name, he's very secular. And he used the smile, you know Mohammad Mossadegh? Okay. He was a democratically elected leader. Iran was very liberal, democratic. Yeah, the West would see it and think, wow, what a liberalized country. Yeah. However, Mohammad Mossadegh made a mistake. He made a mistake of trying to nationalize BP, British Petroleum. The British had a big problem with that. Yeah, and when they had a big problem with that, they didn't look whether it was a democracy or not a democracy. Thereafter, what they did was they noticed the dissenting voices there, and I would suggest don't take my word for it. There is an academic, Mark Curtis, he talks about this. You can read from neutral historians about what happened with Mohammad Mossadegh, because it's very important to modern day Iran that we see today. And what happened, Saif, was with BP, that was their main thing, and the Ayatollahs were the other groups, and they started kind of going with them and assisting them, and the Shah came in, and then there was a brutal dictatorship, and thereafter the Ayatollahs came in. They received support. Now I agree with you that the Ayatollahs, their mentality was not given by the West, however it was fostered and festered.
Yes, exactly. I think we're good on this one.
Yeah, it's the same with the Hindutva. Like it's argued that there's this in India, Pakistan, there was this ideology that, you know, before it was Hindustan, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, and then there was a split. Yeah, Pakistan, which was supposed to be a majority Muslim country, and India, majority Hindu country. And there was this mentality of kind of separation. Yeah, but the thing now is, people argue that, there is extreme elements in India. But however, Saif, any leader that came, they did not entertain the extreme Hindu element. But what happened was, at that time, at this time now, because the leader, Modi, is from RSS, which again has correlatable similarities with Nazism also. This again is, you can read it in Intercept and Guardian, and a lot of academics talk about its similarities to the Nazi mentality. In fact, it's mapped on the RSS, you can research this, mapped on the Nazi mentality. And even the Brits, they have issue with that, but because the trade is so good with India, in fact the mere presence of Priti Patel, one of the impetus or one of the positive things was how Britain can have a good relationship with Modi and with India, and that's why they took them off the red list before Pakistan, even though their COVID cases were very high. There's a lot of issues, but the point that I'm trying to say, Safe, is now it's safe. It's safe for India to light the flames of extreme Hindu mentality to such a degree, Saif. Check this out. I mean, you've done research as well. You know the amount of lynchings that take place on a regular basis in India. Now it's gone to legislation that Muslims are being kept out. Like, we're accepting immigrants from Christian immigrants, Sikh immigrants, and other immigrants, but Muslims are deliberately being left out. Point that I'm trying to say, Saif, I'm sure you've agreed as well, that there is, and the argument same applies with Saudi, that if Saudi was such an oppressive country and all of this, why is it that the West has been aligning itself with Saudi, and has not been giving it liberating the women there, not been giving it a democracy, even though
international politics, my background is in political science. International politics can be explained out of multiple theories, liberalism, Marxism, but the ones that is most relevant here is realism. Realism is all about power, all about interest, and it's how most states operate
exactly.
in the international context, because there's no rules, there's no laws, there's no courts really, and I agree. The Hindu government, the Modi government is not a good example of where states should be in this day and age. I agree that in Pakistan it's the same. In Pakistan it's kind of maybe a little bit of the opposite, where also other minorities are being attacked and being accused of blasphemy when they do. I've written personally a lot of articles about minorities in Pakistan being attacked and temples being sacked because of certain, I think, non-important blasphemy cases. I hope that both those countries move towards a civil state where people are equal, people are free, and people have dignity and rights despite where they.
I hope so too.
I really hope that is in the future.
So I guess just for the viewers that are watching, I guess what I wanted to unpack was this kind of ISIS, Al-Qaeda groups, and it's good that we managed to kind of unpack this to show that there is a disjunct, there is more of an emphasis towards what Islam and Muslims are doing, and because of what is happening, and I think this is one of the points that I missed, certain leaders, certain groups are filling that void of, for example, you know, in Afghanistan, again, both of these articles you can find in The Guardian, like Afghanis that were killed, their bodies were urinated on, and then those, it was in The Guardian that the soldiers, they had to, you know, there was disciplinary things going on, but this is ridiculous. There were kind of a dead Afghan's prosthetic leg, they put beer in it and they were drinking from it. They were cutting off fingers of dead Afghans and putting it as trophies. I imagine, and this is information safe that's filtered to us. Imagine now if you are living in that country and that's happened to your father, that's happened to your mother, and day in, day out there's drone attacks. Like, I'm sure you've been following what's going on in Afghanistan. I mean, it's difficult not to because it's in our faces with the front covers. And they said, this is about a couple of weeks ago, a drone attack, about 20 people died, or it was by accident, sorry. And even Australia, they apologized for what happened in Afghanistan and we're disciplining our people. But sorry, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. What about the people there? They need answers straight away. You wake up and your father and mother's gone, and somebody comes and offers a solution. He claims to be an imam or whatnot, but safe. We have ways, like we have a sanad. If I am to learn Quran, or if I am to learn Islamic knowledge from you, I need to make sure that there is a chain. You studied from your teacher, you studied from their teacher, there's a chain that goes to Prophet ﷺ. I check your credentials. You have a good standing in society, safe. But the problem is, anyone can claim to be an imam. Imam just means...
And I'll tell you, in Syria, there is people that are known to be very bad people, very non-religious, that became heads of like Islamic militias, which is very funny. Well, the problem, I think, in Syria, let's say, when people revolted against Assad, we have been living under a dictatorship for so long that people don't even know what a liberalist is, what a socialist is, what a communist is. Those words, in a George Orwellian way, were taken off people's dictionary. Therefore, the motivation factor, how we can push people to go and fight and maybe be willing to die or motivate them against the dictator, fell into religion, and that is, I think, because of a lack of political consciousness. So in certain
let me give you an example, Saif, and apologies because I have to pray as well, but I've thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you. I thought it was really stimulating, and I hope we're going to have it again. Are you here next week as well?
I hope I will come back. It was really nice to be here.
Very good. It was just in my mind. What was the last thing that you said you might trigger?
About lack of ideology, therefore religion can be motivation, about certain non-religious people who became leaders of militias, stuff like that. Like, for them, religion filled the void. And if they were Hindu, that would have been like their motivational factor to form a militia. And because they were Muslim, that was... So I think
It's like, you know, even when you talk about the first suicide bombers, Tamil Tigers, yeah, political ideology. Then you had a group. It's a Jewish group, yeah. Then they would do that. And then in fact, Saif, there's a really good book by Pape. It's called Dying to Win, and he's looked at suicide cases, suicide bombing cases, and he concluded that pre 9/11, pre-Iraq, the cases were very minimal, in fact negligible. Yeah. However, as the surge of colonization and illegal warfare increased, and I would also say, don't take my word for it, check it yourself. There are other studies that have taken place, and that conclude the same thing, that foreign occupation increases terrorism, increases radicalization. In fact, there was a research done that correlates drone attacks to rise of extremism, and this has been accepted by military leaders in the US, but they still do it. Why? Because the infrastructure's there. It's been, the investments have taken place.
I totally agree. Oppression, injustice leads to extremism in all its variants, in all its colors.
And also, Saif, would you also agree in this day and age that the religion or the countries that are mostly under warfare or occupation are Muslim countries? Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine. Okay, brilliant.
I'm not going to comment on why or where the conflict starts, but it's a big discussion, many discussions.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, I've got Asr prayer and sun's coming down. Even last week I delayed it also. I'm going to pray 5 minutes and then I can come back and we can speak. But if you have to go, I can understand.
I'll see my friend if we have to go.
She's there.
Or that I'll see you next week.
Saif, wallahi, it was a real pleasure speaking to you.
You too also.
And speaking to people like yourself that, you know, have seen certain things, but they're still able to have a rational, a positive. You have a mashallah nice smile also.
Thank you.
It's really needed, and I encourage that also. And I'll be here. I'm not going to be here next week. I'll probably be here the week after, inshallah. So if you want to speak, I have a channel on YouTube called SMILE2JANNAH.
SMILE2JANNAH, okay.
So if you ever want to kind of hook up for a cup of tea or something, message me on Instagram, inshallah.
Okay.
And your smile is back. And we can meet, inshallah.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Thank
Look after
you.
yourself, Saif. Inshallah.
Wait. You have to pay. Paid interview. Just go in like.
Thank you for being willing to discuss with me. I live in Norway. In Norway, there's very few Arabs. There's very few Muslims generally, and I know people can be ugly on the internet. I know that.